spread. So as we discussed, the standard is that standard flow, that way that we've done things, that we've then, once we've established, we've educated, as Vlad did, right? We've educated our team so that they know that change, they know how to do that process, and that anyone new, right, can be trained by the preceptors to do that new thing. So we have that. The next thing that we look at is our spread. We talked about spread a little bit, and some Scott touched on some ways that we can kind of spread great ideas. I think all of us within our ministries and our departments have pockets of excellence, right? You might have a department or a team you know that does something extraordinarily well. And we as a system, a region, ministry-wide, all of us included, have opportunities in getting the word out, spreading those, right? We allow that pocket of excellence to stay in pocket because we don't necessarily share with everyone that it needs to be shared with, right? So as Scott said, some ways that we as leaders can address that: communication, right? Through our safety huddles, director to director, right? With your higher-ups, with your staffs, talking about things at huddle. Right? Communication and sharing of ideas is how we're really going to allow those pockets of excellence to move throughout our ministries and really achieve our metrics and meet our KPIs. So if you have a great idea, bring it to Safety Hub. If you have a great idea, bring it to your department huddles and talk about it with your supervisor. And then, of course, as we discussed before, I think an added benefit of the way that we've transitioned our continuous improvement work to where all of us are supporting different ministries, but then are all a team, right, is going to contribute to that. Because then I know what's working well at the ministry that I'm supporting, and I talk to the CI resources at other ministries. And it can be like that for all leaders, because I know all EVS leaders and imaging leaders and pharmacy leaders and nursing directors, right, meet and talk and share ideas. So really, spread is on the leader of a department that's doing extraordinarily well to make sure that they share that. Right? And if we view our organization, going all the way back to yesterday, right, if we view our organization as the peach trees, right, we're a family. We want others to succeed. We want other departments around the hospital, our counterparts at other ministries, to succeed in the way that we're succeeding. So we're sharing our ideas. Right? We're not in competition because we know that recognition is limitless. Right? We know that opportunities are limitless. There's not a limited number, and if other people have them, I don't have them. It's limitless, so we know that we can share those ideas. Any questions about spread? We're not going to do this activity for the sake of time, but I'm going to tell a just very short story. I had a business instructor. My MBA was my last class in my MBA cohort. He challenged us to brush our teeth for a week using our opposite hand. I tried it one time. I'm left-handed. I'm left-handed, but I brushed my teeth with my right. Tried it with my left hand. One time, lasted about 30 seconds, and I stopped. Never went back, never tried it again. Right? I challenge you to try it because it is extremely uncomfortable. It's not something I'm used to. It's not something I was going to sustain. Right? I pretty much stopped immediately, went right back, and didn't report on my results because I knew I hadn't done as I was asked. When we're talking about changes like this, process changes, implementing standards, we have nursing staff, we have staff in our departments, been here a very long time. Right? They have one way of doing things that has sustained them through an entire career. Right? So some of the ways that we designed our airplanes in our first round might have been the way that we've always designed our airplanes. Right? It's the only way I've been taught to do an airplane. It's the only way I've ever done an airplane like that every day for 12 years. So when Vlad comes and asks us to do an airplane a different way, it's uncomfortable. Right? It's brushing our teeth with our opposite hand, right? It's not something that I'm gonna sustain, right? Because my business teacher isn't home watching me brush my teeth. So that even though he asked that, I did it for 30 seconds and I said, well, this is no fun. And I stopped. And I never did it again. Right? Because that kind of change is difficult. Change, though, is something that in our industry, and most industries, is a non-negotiable. Right? We are constantly forced to change our practices because that's how we stay competitive in the industry. Healthcare has to constantly change its practices because that's the nature of science, right? We have to constantly improve our product and our outcomes in order to improve the health outcomes of our patients. And we have to constantly change our practices in response to external things, right? Reimbursement rates, Medicare, Medicaid, the changes that came with the Affordable Care Act, right? We constantly have external and internal forces that force us to change our practices or close our doors. And since we're not going to close our doors, right, because then we can't live our mission at all if we're not a functioning health organization, we have to then change our practices, knowing that some of those things are going to feel like brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. So if I forced everyone to brush their teeth with their opposite hand, and you didn't have a choice not to, right? I said you need to do this or else your teeth are falling. Okay? What kind of things could I put in place, right, as your leader to ensure that you would have success in brushing your teeth with your opposite hand? What ideas for this?
Tie your main hand behind your back.
There you go. Tie your other hand behind your back.
Check in with you to make sure.
Check in with you, absolutely. I can check in with you, right? My business teacher didn't check in with me. He told me to do it one time, never returned back to the idea, so of course I stopped after 30 seconds.
Breath check.
Absolutely. There you go. Breath check, right? Am I doing
That's
it
an
right?
agreement.
Soul.
Wow. Absolutely.
Gonna do that now after lunch?
No, where's our bats with them?
The one's over here.
So when we get in the mindset, right, that change is not negotiable and that change is going to be difficult, then our charge as leaders is to support through difficult changes. Right? There's really two ways that I think that we can do this, and it's tools and it's culture. Right? So as a leader, I'm trying to empower my team to work through a very difficult change successfully. Right? I can help build a culture and I can provide tools. Some of the tools that we can use, we have. Some of the tools that we can use are our performance boards, which we've talked at length about today. Performance boards are a great way to monitor changes over time. Visual management components, right? Red or green. How are we doing today? Those and-ons, those quick are we winning or losing? Visual management tools are a great tool to sustain a difficult change. Right? Any kind of graphs, process control boards for anyone that are still using those within their department. Right? Showing visually, using these tools, how we can track a change. And then building a culture. So you tell me, as leaders, how can you help support a culture, right, that can support process change successfully? How can you help build that?
I mean, I usually tell them, I mean, with anything that we do, since we've been starting on this journey, is that things in the beginning are going to be clunky. So I think the expectation that it's okay for it to be clunky, we're going to get better. Because, I mean, most of us are all kind of in our own healthcare, and we all have kind of a personality. It's right the first time, and there's no room for mistakes or not being perfect, to get great. So it's hard for us to go, it's okay. So I think just saying that it's okay, we've got to start somewhere.
Yes.
We can't wait forever. You got to just start it and tweak it as you go. So it's okay, it'll be clunky. I'm not expecting everyone's going to be able to meet this measure right away. I just say that we all need to start it, and we all need to be paddling the same way. And I can't have people saying, I don't want to I did this long ago, and we got a whole reformation of our department, because I was like, we're gonna change the way we're doing things, like, way before you guys all rolled through here. But, cause I knew that I couldn't have a bunch of people doing their own thing, or it was never gonna work, so, I just think setting them up with those sort of, that mindset, I mean, it's been a learning process for me too, because I didn't want it right the first time, I don't wanna have to be reworked.
Yeah.
But it's just not gonna happen that way, so, once you get over that, then you're fine, okay, fine.
Say all the time, like a key, for me at least, like a key leadership trait is you have to be painfully comfortable with failure, right? Because that's how your staff grows and that's how they learn. I love the saying that you can't think yourself into a new way of thinking, but you can act yourself into a new way of thinking, right? So if we tell them what to do, if we give them all of the answers, it's not really meaningful for them in terms of their growth. If we give them systems, which is kind of what we're doing with the operating model, we're giving people systems within which to work, but we're not dictating this is exactly how you should apply this, and that's how people learn. You have to act your way into a new way of thinking. So I think being painfully comfortable with failure is a part of that.
That's a difficult thing when you're working with a group of individuals who are kind of all have that same, mentality. They're gonna get analytical, they're not, this isn't gonna work, because I'm like, okay, we just gotta start.
Yep.
Let's start, and we'll tweak it as we go, and you guys are in the process, you know it, we'll come up with the answers, and I mean, we do.
And I'll
Yeah.
support you through that. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
important
absolutely.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
But you gotta give it some time to work, right? You can't just say, day
It's
two,
gonna
this isn't
feel
working, we're
uncomfortable,
done.
right? It's going to
It's
feel
not working, I'm done. I told you it wouldn't work, I said, we can't do that, so.
And Tracy, I think you're exactly right. I think there's the reason that we really start this with so much about leadership is exactly because you having that mindset with your staff allows them to be successful in that change. Not all leaders are necessarily going to have that mindset.
Well, and also for the employee, what does I think about, what does the employee think, oh, my leader's gonna think I'm a failure, like, they're gonna think poorly of me, so if I tell them, I know we're not gonna do this right, and
Yeah.
if I make mistakes, and we make mistakes, and we think we got it, but it's okay, so then I think that's what it takes that away, because they all wanna be, you want to be the leader, you should always be the rock star, and sometimes you're not, you're supposed to.
And I think there's some key things. Clear communication about expectations from the beginning.
Mhm.
Like when you're rolling out new standard work, at least for nursing, the struggles are night shift, day shift, weekend option, and most of us have that, right? And that we have some sort of sustainable kickoff point. The other piece that we have challenges with now that we're away from the RIE is that units are doing their own interventions and we float across units like crazy. We are pulling staff from one unit to the other. So how are we going to make sure that anybody that is on our team for this 12 hours knows what we're working on? And then being able to give people a mechanism for feedback when we're trying something new is we have to continue that dialogue, because if they don't like it, why, and what are we gonna do to change it? And then celebrating the small wins is so important, because you have to tell them you're really excited about the new change that they're doing, even if it's not the end result, but the fact that they're all doing it the same.
Yes.
I think that those are the keys in maintaining that culture and being on the journey with them, wanting to listen.
Both absolutely correct, and when we think about trying to implement change successfully with our teams, I think about another big thing we can do, all the way back to the beginning of the class with the Michael Jr. video, right? Tell them the why, right? Get them to connect to the why. Right? I'm not just changing your process to change your process because I want to, get saucy on Monday, right? There's a reason for this.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason for this. This is evidence-based, right? This is best for our patients, right? This is going to decrease our sepsis cases, or it's going to increase our revenue so that we can do more charity cases, right? Connect them to the why, right, of the process change. I think is what really all of us as leaders, right, can really do when we're trying to implement something that's difficult. Any other thoughts on that?
I'm thinking about even right now, I think for Lake St. Louis, it was a little bit frustrating that we started that lean journey and then got about a year into it and we're doing something different now.
Mhm.
So I was just thinking to myself, it's probably something that I could even sort of speak to with my group, because they were like, oh sure, another thing that we did, and now we're doing something different. But, maybe the way to sort of pitch it is more that, you know what, as a system, we learned that we need to tweak some things, that we're doing different ways, this is, you know, it's still the same, it's not that we aborted anything, we're just tweaking the whole improvement, you know, model to this now, you know what I mean?
I think
So
you're exactly right.
And I don't think I ever like put that, and just like, oh, you know, this is just something we're doing, some pause, we're gonna do something different, but, you know, probably need to say that even at a system level, we find things that we need to tweak.
We rolled it out as East Coast, West Coast lean. Like, there's multiple ways to do lean, and like this is the SSM lean. We're kind of marrying two schools of lean thought because we're still using the same tools, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
We're just doing it in a different way.
And I think that's an important way to think of it, and I do encourage you to discuss it that way with your staff. It's not that we aborted one and we're starting another. This is a continuation. You know, all of you have said that this is all familiar to you. It's familiar to you because you've been green trained and you've been on lean events, and a lot of the principles and the things that we're talking about are still the same. Right? We've just changed their delivery a little bit by implementing the operating model and moving away a little bit from the week-long RIEs. But of course, there are still RIEs as well. So it's really just a development. It's not a we stopped one and kind of started something else. So I like